Hello there, and welcome to my channel. I'm so glad you found your way here today. There is a whole universe living inside you, one you have never had to manage or maintain by hand. It has been working since before your first memory, and it will keep working long after this moment passes. Today we are going to slow down and listen to it. Not to fix anything, not to worry about anything, but simply to notice what has been quietly, faithfully happening all along. Every heartbeat, every breath, every small unseen repair has been carrying you forward without asking for thanks. We will move gently through the body, from its smallest cells to its widest systems, pausing to feel how much of you is already safe, already cared for, already working exactly as it should. And before we begin, if these calm explorations are something you enjoy, consider liking and subscribing. It helps others find their way here too. Now let's begin. There is something quietly astonishing about the fact that you have never once had to remind your body to keep going. No morning checklist, no daily instructions. It simply begins, and it simply continues. Picture a city at night, its lights humming, its systems running while every resident sleeps undisturbed. That is close to what is happening inside you at this very second. Somewhere a cell is dividing. Somewhere a signal is traveling along a nerve. Somewhere a hormone is being released in an amount so precise it could not be replicated by hand. None of it required your awareness to begin. And none of it will pause, simply because your attention has drifted elsewhere. The body operates through layered systems, nervous, circulatory, endocrine, immune, each running its own quiet schedule, each responding to the others without needing translation. This coordination happens continuously, whether you are focused, distracted, asleep, or simply listening to a voice like this one. Scientists describe this as homeostasis, the body's steady effort to keep its internal conditions stable no matter what is happening outside it. You were never meant to carry the weight of running all of this yourself. That work was already being done gently in the background of your life long before you thought to wonder about it. So for these next few minutes, there is nothing to manage, nothing to check on. You can simply let this quiet machinery keep doing what it has always done, and rest in the fact that it never once needed your permission to begin. Somewhere beneath your ribs, hidden from view, there is a muscle doing something remarkable. It has been flexing and releasing since the moment you were born, and in all that time you have likely never once looked for it. This muscle is called the diaphragm, a dome-shaped sheet of tissue stretched beneath the lungs. When it contracts, it pulls downward, and air is drawn in. When it relaxes, air is gently released. This happens automatically, controlled by a part of the brainstem that requires no conscious thought at all. You can choose to breathe deeply or slowly if you wish, but even if you forget entirely, the diaphragm will not. There is something worth noticing in that. This feeling sometimes visits you on the quietest evenings when your shoulders finally drop and your breath seems to deepen on its own, as though the body had simply been waiting for permission to slow down. The diaphragm's rhythm shifts, with your state quickening under stress, softening under calm, and this connection between breath and nervous system is well documented in physiology. Slower, deeper breathing activates the vagus nerve, which in turn signals the body toward rest. What is remarkable is how little credit this muscle receives for something so essential. It does not pause for recognition. It simply continues breath after breath, holding the most basic rhythm of your life, steady so that everything else in you has the air it needs to keep going. It is easy to think of blood as something still, something that simply exists inside you. But blood is never still. It is always moving, always traveling, tracing a path so extensive that the distance is almost difficult to picture. Consider a single drop beginning its journey at the heart. It moves outward through arteries, narrowing gradually into smaller and smaller vessels, until it reaches capillaries so fine that blood cells must pass through in single file. There, oxygen slips quietly into tissue and carbon dioxide is gathered up to be carried away. Then, the journey reverses, moving back through veins toward the heart and lungs, only to begin again. This entire circuit repeats continuously, driven by a heart that never takes a day off. Physiologists estimate the total length of the body's blood vessels, if laid end to end, would stretch far enough to circle the Earth more than twice over. And your blood traces some version of that vast network every single day, delivering oxygen and nutrients to every living part of you. There is no moment when this stops for rest. No pause for a quiet afternoon. It continues while you work, while you worry, while you finally exhale and let your guard down. What is worth sitting with is not the distance itself, but the devotion behind it. Somewhere inside you right now, this tireless circuit is completing itself again, delivering exactly what you need, exactly where you need it, without you ever having to ask. Here is something quietly strange to consider. The skin you are wearing right now is not the same skin you had a month ago. Cell by cell, it has already been replaced, and you never felt a single moment of the exchange. Skin is built in layers, and the outermost layer, the epidermis, is in a constant state of renewal. New cells form at the base and slowly rise toward the surface over roughly 4 weeks, pushing older cells outward until they are shed mostly invisibly into the world around you. This process never pauses. It is happening on your hands as you listen, on your face, along the length of your arms. We often carry the weight of the world on our minds, forgetting that our physical self is already quietly renewing itself beneath our notice, layer by layer, without complaint. This constant turnover is part of what makes skin such an effective barrier, keeping moisture in and the outside world out. Older cells, though flattened and no longer alive in the traditional sense, still serve a purpose, forming a protective outer shield before they finally let go. There is something tender in that image, a body willing to release what it no longer needs over and over, simply to keep offering you something fresh and functional in its place. Nothing about this required your attention. It has simply been happening quietly in the background of every ordinary day you have lived. There is a rhythm inside you that predates every memory you hold. It began weeks before you were born, and it has not missed a beat since, not through sleep, not through fear, not through the ordinary chaos of a single day. The heart is a muscle unlike any other, capable of generating its own electrical signal from a small cluster of cells known as the sinoatrial node. This natural pacemaker fires steadily, prompting the heart to contract and relax in a pattern so consistent that most people never think to notice it at all. Place a hand gently over your chest, and you may feel it now, a soft and steady pulse, adjusting slightly with each breath, each thought, each shift in your surroundings. That subtle responsiveness is not a flaw. It is evidence of a system finely tuned to keep you safe. The heart beats faster under stress and slower under calm, guided by signals from the nervous system that respond to everything from temperature to emotion. And yet through all of that variation, it never forgets its central task, to keep circulating what your body needs to survive. There is a quiet devotion in that kind of consistency. No instruction manual taught your heart how to do this. No effort of will keeps it going. It composes its rhythm on its own faithfully for every year you are given, asking nothing from you, except perhaps a little more rest. Most people think of breathing as a single act, the same motion repeated over and over. But the inhale and the exhale are not equal. One gathers, the other releases. And the releasing carries a message the body has been listening for all along. When you exhale particularly slowly, the vagus nerve becomes more active, shifting the nervous system toward what is often called the rest and digest state. Heart rate tends to slow slightly. Muscles begin to loosen. This is not imagination or metaphor. It is a measurable physiological shift documented clearly in studies of breath and the autonomic nervous system. Have you ever felt your shoulders drop as you breathe out, realizing your body was simply waiting for permission to let go? This is why longer exhales are often used in techniques meant to ease anxiety or settle a racing mind. The body is not being tricked into calm. It is being reminded of a state it already knows how to enter one. it returns to naturally whenever it is finally allowed the space to do so. There is something reassuring in knowing that calm is not something you have to manufacture. It is already built into your own breath, encoded quietly into your physiology, waiting patiently for the moments you choose to slow down enough to meet it. Step from a dim room into bright daylight, and something happens almost instantly, so quickly that you never actually witness it occurring. Your eyes have already adjusted before you have finished noticing the change. This adjustment is handled by the iris, a ring of muscles surrounding the pupil. In bright light it contracts, narrowing the pupil to limit how much light enters. In dim light it relaxes, widening the pupil to let more light in. This entire process is involuntary, governed by the autonomic nervous system, and it happens continuously, adjusting in real time to whatever environment you move through. Beyond the pupil, the retina itself contains two types of light-sensitive cells, rods and cones, which shift in sensitivity depending on lighting conditions. A slower adaptation that can take several minutes in very dim settings. Together, these systems allow you to move from a sunlit street into a shadowed room without ever consciously managing the transition. There is something almost tender in this constant, invisible calibration. Your eyes are perpetually fine-tuning themselves to protect your vision and keep the world clear, adjusting long before you would ever think to ask them to. You have spent an entire lifetime never once witnessing this happen, and yet it has happened every single day in every room you have ever entered, quietly, faithfully, without a single mistake announcing itself. Deep within you, surrounding the brain and spinal cord, there is a fluid most people never think about, moving in slow, rhythmic waves, like a tide that never fully recedes. This fluid is called cerebrospinal fluid, and it serves several essential purposes. It cushions the brain against sudden movement, helps remove waste products, and circulates nutrients throughout the central nervous system. It is produced continuously by specialized tissue within the brain's ventricles, then absorbed back into the bloodstream, in a cycle that repeats itself several times throughout a single day. Recent research has drawn particular attention to how this fluid becomes more active during deep sleep, flowing in stronger, more rhythmic pulses that appear to help clear away metabolic waste accumulated during waking hours. This feeling sometimes visits you as a kind of mental clarity after a truly restful night, one that science is only beginning to fully explain. The brain, for all its complexity, floats gently within this fluid, buoyed and protected from the ordinary jostling of daily movement. Without it, even simple actions like turning your head could cause the brain to strike against the skull. There is something quietly moving in the idea that even your most delicate organ is held afloat, cushioned by something as simple and patient as fluid, tending to it in slow, unseen waves, long before you ever think to thank it. Bones have a way of seeming permanent, fixed, unchanging, like something carved once and left alone. That impression, as it turns out, is not quite true. Bone is living tissue made of cells that are constantly active. Two main types drive this process: osteoclasts, which break down old bone tissue, and osteoblasts, which build new bone in its place. Together, they carry out what is known as bone remodeling, a slow but continuous cycle that reshapes the skeleton gradually over time. In adults, this means a significant portion of the skeleton is essentially renewed across the span of several years. That seems obvious once explained. It rarely feels that way though, because none of it can be seen or felt directly. This process is also responsive. Bones subjected to regular movement and gentle weight-bearing activity tend to maintain greater density, while inactivity can lead to gradual loss over time. This is part of why activities like walking are so often recommended, not simply for the muscles, but for the very structure holding everything else in place. There is a quiet resilience in this. The skeleton you rely on today is not the same one you had years ago, and it will not be the same one you have years from now. It has been rebuilding itself all along, patiently, invisibly, ensuring that what holds you up remains strong enough to keep doing so. Something curious happens the moment you catch the scent of a favorite meal. Long before a single bite reaches your mouth, your body has already started preparing for it. This is called the cephalic phase of digestion, and it begins with nothing more than a sight, a smell, or even a memory of food. Signals travel from the brain to the salivary glands, prompting them to increase saliva production in anticipation. The digestive system, in other words, does not wait for confirmation. It trusts the signal and begins preparing early. We often carry the weight of the world on our minds, forgetting that our body has already been anticipating our needs before we have even consciously recognized them ourselves. Saliva itself carries out several quiet essential tasks. It contains enzymes that begin breaking down starches, immediately moistens food to make swallowing easier, and helps protect the teeth by neutralizing acids in the mouth. This entire system operates continuously, adjusting its output depending on need, increasing before a meal and settling again once eating is finished. There is something worth noticing in this small act of anticipation. The body does not simply react to what happens. It prepares for what it expects, quietly, gently, staying one step ahead of your needs long before you have ever asked it to. There is a clock inside you that was never wound by hand, and yet it has kept remarkably accurate time for your entire life. This internal timekeeper is called the circadian rhythm, governed by a small cluster of cells in the brain known as the suprachiasmatic nucleus. It responds primarily to light, particularly the light entering through the eyes each morning, and uses that signal to coordinate the timing of nearly every system in the body. Hormone release, body temperature, digestion, and alertness all shift according to this internal schedule, even on days spent entirely indoors. Think back to the last time you fell asleep without planning to, simply because your body decided quietly and on its own that it was time to rest. This clock does not operate in isolation. Nearly every organ carries its own smaller rhythm, loosely synchronized to the master clock in the brain, allowing the liver, the heart, and even the digestive system to anticipate what the day will require of them. This is part of why consistent sleep and wake times tend to support smoother functioning throughout the body, not simply better rest. There is something steadying in knowing that a part of you is always keeping track, gently aligning your inner world with the rising and setting of light, whether or not you have ever consciously noticed it doing so. Few actions are as universal or as strangely unexplained as the yawn. It arrives without warning, spreads easily between people, and yet researchers still do not agree on exactly why it happens. For years, the leading explanation was that yawning helped increase oxygen intake, but more recent studies have called that theory into question. One prominent alternative suggests yawning may help cool the brain, based on research showing yawns occur more frequently when brain temperature is slightly elevated. Others propose it plays a role in transitioning between states of alertness, such as waking up or settling into rest. What makes yawning even more curious is its contagious nature. Seeing another person yawn, or even reading about yawning, can be enough to trigger one in you. Researchers still are not certain exactly why this happens, though some suspect it relates to empathy and social connection between individuals. This feeling sometimes visits you in the quietest moments, a soft yawn arriving unannounced, as though your body was simply following some ancient unspoken rhythm shared between people. There is a certain comfort in an unanswered question like this one. Not every part of the body needs to be fully understood to be trusted. Some things simply continue faithfully generation after generation, long before science ever catches up to explain them. It is easy to associate tears entirely with emotion, yet most of the tears your eyes produce have nothing to do with feeling at all. Basal tears are released continuously in small, steady amounts, keeping the surface of the eye moist, clear, and protected from debris. Every time you blink, a thin layer of this fluid spreads gently across the eye, washing away dust and maintaining the smooth surface needed for clear vision. This happens dozens of times each hour entirely without your awareness. Reflex tears serve a different purpose, produced in larger amounts in response to irritants like smoke or onion vapor, flushing the eye quickly to protect it from harm. Emotional tears, the ones most people think of first, are chemically distinct from the other two, and researchers have found they contain higher levels of stress-related hormones, suggesting they may serve as a kind of release valve for the body. There is something quietly moving in knowing that your eyes are being tended to constantly, long before any feeling ever enters the picture. The same mechanism that clears a stray eyelash is in its own way protecting you. Even in stillness, this small, steady system continues its work, gently keeping your vision clear, asking nothing of you except the occasional effortless blink. Step outside on a cold morning or into a warm room after, and something happens almost immediately, long before you consciously register discomfort of any kind. This regulation is managed by the hypothalamus, a small structure deep within the brain that functions much like an internal thermostat. It continuously monitors blood temperature and adjusts the body's response accordingly, narrowing blood vessels near the skin to conserve heat in cold conditions, or widening them to release heat when it is warm. Sweating, shivering, even subtle shifts in blood flow to the extremities. All of this happens automatically coordinated, without a single conscious decision. Have you ever noticed your hands feeling cooler on a chilly day, without ever choosing for that to happen? This system is remarkably precise, typically keeping core body temperature within a very narrow range, regardless of the environment outside. Even small deviations trigger an immediate, layered response involving the nervous system, blood vessels, and sweat glands working together in careful coordination. There is a quiet reliability in this kind of constancy. Whatever the weather, whatever the room, your body has already been adjusting on your behalf, holding your internal world steady so that everything else inside you can continue functioning exactly as it should. There is something curious about fingernails and hair. They can be trimmed without pain, and yet somehow they still count as part of a living body. Both are made primarily of keratin, a tough, fibrous protein also found in skin. The visible parts of nails and hair are in fact no longer alive, made of cells that have already died and hardened. But beneath the surface at the root, living cells continue dividing steadily, pushing older material outward and upward in a slow, continuous process of growth. We often carry the weight of the world on our minds, forgetting that even the smallest, quietest parts of us are still in their own way steadily at work. Growth rates vary depending on factors like age, health, and genetics, but the underlying mechanism remains the same throughout life. A patient cellular process operating far from conscious awareness. This is part of why nails can reveal early signs of certain health changes, since they reflect the body's underlying condition, even in something as simple as their texture or growth pattern. There is something almost humble in this. Even the parts of you considered lifeless are, in truth, the visible record of a living process, steady and ongoing, quietly shaping itself, one cell at a time, long after you have stopped paying attention. Close your eyes for a moment and try standing perfectly still. Something keeps you upright, even without sight to guide you, and it has almost nothing to do with your legs. Deep within the inner ear lies a structure called the vestibular system, made up of tiny fluid-filled canals and chambers. As the head moves, this fluid shifts, bending microscopic hair cells that send signals to the brain about position, direction, and motion. The brain then combines this information with input from the eyes and from receptors in the muscles and joints, creating a constant, seamless sense of where the body is in space. That seems obvious, once explained. It rarely feels that way though, since balance is something most people only notice the moment it falters. This system operates continuously and largely without conscious effort, adjusting instantly to changes as simple as tilting the head or turning a corner. Motion sickness, interestingly, is thought to arise when there is a mismatch between what the eyes see and what the inner ear senses. A small disagreement between two systems, usually working in perfect harmony. There is something quietly remarkable in this. An entire sense responsible for something as fundamental as staying upright resides in a space smaller than a fingertip, working tirelessly in the background of every step you take. Somewhere low in your back, two organs the size of a fist are performing one of the body's most essential, least celebrated tasks, and they have never once paused to be thanked for it. These are the kidneys, and their primary role is to filter blood, removing waste products and excess substances, while carefully retaining what the body still needs. Blood passes through millions of tiny filtering units, called nephrons, a process that repeats continuously throughout the day, filtering the equivalent of the body's entire blood supply many times over. The filtered waste eventually becomes urine, while essential minerals, water, and nutrients are returned to circulation. This feeling sometimes visits you as a quiet sense of steadiness on an ordinary day, one made possible in part by organs working tirelessly behind the scenes to keep your internal chemistry balanced. Beyond filtration, the kidneys also help regulate blood pressure, maintain proper mineral balance, and stimulate the production of red blood cells. This is a remarkable amount of responsibility for two organs so rarely given a second thought. There is something worth pausing on here. This filtering happens without ceremony, without applause, every single day of your life. It is one of the clearest examples of how much of the body's most important work unfolds quietly, entirely out of view, simply so you can carry on. There is a strange kind of intelligence in muscle tissue, one that allows it to remember in a physical sense patterns it has practiced before. This phenomenon, often called muscle memory, is rooted in changes at the cellular level. Repeated movement strengthens the neural pathways connecting the brain to specific muscle groups, allowing those signals to travel more efficiently over time. Additionally, research suggests that muscle cells may retain certain structural changes even after a period of disuse, which is part of why previously trained muscles often regain strength more quickly than they built it the first time. Have you ever noticed how a familiar movement, like riding a bicycle after years away, returns to the body almost effortlessly, as though it had never truly been forgotten? This process does not require intensity to take hold. Gentle, consistent movement is often enough to build lasting efficiency, which is one reason why steady, moderate activity tends to be more sustainable over time than occasional bursts of effort. There is something quietly encouraging in this. The body does not require perfection to improve. It simply asks for consistency, gradually refining itself with each repetition, storing away what it learns in the quiet architecture of muscle and nerve, ready to be called upon again whenever it is needed. Rest is often treated as an absence, empty time where nothing much happens. In truth, stillness is when some of the body's most important work quietly begins. When the body is not actively responding to physical demands or perceived stress, resources that would otherwise be directed toward immediate action become available for repair. This includes cellular maintenance, tissue recovery, and immune system regulation processes that are more active during periods of genuine rest than during activity or stress. We often carry the weight of the world on our minds, forgetting that stillness is not laziness. It is the body's chosen moment to quietly repair what the day has worn down. This shift is closely tied to the autonomic nervous system, which moves between a state oriented toward action and a state oriented toward recovery. Chronic stress tends to keep the body leaning toward the former, which is part of why prolonged tension can interfere with healing and immune function over time. There is a gentle wisdom in the body's design here. It does not resist rest. It welcomes it, using even brief periods of stillness to quietly attend to what needs mending, asking only that you occasionally allow it the chance to do so. A resting heart rate seems like a simple measurement, just a number counted over time. But behind that number lies years of quiet, cumulative adaptation. The heart, like any muscle, becomes more efficient with consistent use. In individuals with regular cardiovascular activity, the heart often grows slightly stronger, allowing it to pump more blood with each beat. As a result, it does not need to beat as frequently to meet the body's needs, which is why many active individuals show a lower resting heart rate over time. Think back to the last time you rested after a long walk and noticed how quickly your breathing and heartbeat settled back into their familiar steady rhythm. This number can also reflect broader patterns of health, including stress levels, sleep quality, and overall cardiovascular condition. It is not a fixed trait, but something that shifts gradually in response to how the body is cared for over time. A quiet record written in beats per minute. There is something meaningful in this. Your heart is not simply reacting to the present moment. It is carrying forward the influence of years, adapting patiently, refining itself with every walk taken, every night of good rest, every small act of care extended toward it. There is a hidden population living inside you, vast and largely unseen, and remarkably much of it is not working against you but alongside you. Trillions of microorganisms reside primarily in the digestive tract, collectively known as the gut microbiome. Far from being harmful, many of these bacteria play essential roles, helping break down complex fibers the body cannot digest on its own, producing certain vitamins, and communicating with the immune system to help it distinguish between harmless and harmful substances. This relationship is understood as symbiotic, a quiet partnership that has evolved over the course of human history. That seems obvious once explained. It rarely feels that way though, since most people never consider that their own body is in part a shared environment. Research continues to reveal how deeply this microbial community influences health, beyond digestion alone, including immune regulation and even certain aspects of mood, through a connection often referred to as the gut-brain axis. The full scope of this influence is still being actively studied. There is something quietly humbling in this. You are never entirely alone, even within your own body. A vast cooperative community has been working alongside you all along, asking for little more than balance and care in exchange for a service performed faithfully every day. Somewhere in your bloodstream right now, cells are moving with quiet purpose, scanning, checking, and gently determining what belongs in your body and what does not. These are white blood cells, and they exist in several distinct types, each with its own specialized role. Some, like neutrophils, respond quickly to unfamiliar material engulfing and neutralizing it. Others, like lymphocytes, are involved in longer-term recognition, learning to identify specific threats and remembering them for future encounters. This entire system moves continuously through the blood and tissues, a quiet, ongoing patrol, requiring no conscious direction whatsoever. This feeling sometimes visits you as an unexplained sense of steadiness, one made possible in part by a system working tirelessly and calmly to keep your internal environment safe. What makes this system remarkable is its restraint as much as its action. It does not attack indiscriminately. It shields and protects selectively, distinguishing your own healthy cells from unfamiliar material, with a level of precision still not fully understood in all its detail. There is something steadying in imagining this quiet vigilance. Long before you ever feel unwell, and long after you have forgotten to think about it, these cells continue their careful, gentle work protecting you, simply because that is what they were built to do. There is a quiet kind of wisdom built into every skin cell, one that allows it to recognize entirely on its own when its purpose has been fulfilled. This process is called apoptosis, a form of programmed cell death that is neither sudden nor destructive. As skin cells rise through the epidermis and reach the surface, they gradually flatten, lose them. This is a controlled, orderly process, distinct from injury or illness, occurring continuously as part of the skin's natural renewal cycle. Have you ever noticed how a small scrape heals cleanly, the skin quietly rebuilding itself without you ever consciously guiding a single step of the process. This same mechanism, cellular self-recognition and graceful release, occurs throughout the body, not just in skin. It is part of how the body maintains balance, removing what is no longer needed to make space for what comes next. There is something gently reassuring in this image. Even at the smallest possible scale, the body understands the value of letting go. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is clung to past its purpose. Each cell simply completes its role quietly and steps aside for what follows. There is a part of you capable of remembering something you yourself may have long forgotten, sometimes for the rest of your life. This is the work of memory cells, a specialized subset of white blood cells created after the body first encounters a particular virus or bacteria. Once formed, these cells can persist for years, even decades, remaining quietly in reserve. Should the same threat appear again, these cells respond far more quickly and effectively than they did the first time, often preventing illness altogether or significantly reducing its severity. We often carry the weight of the world on our minds, forgetting that some part of us has already been quietly protecting us from battles we do not even remember fighting. This is the underlying principle behind vaccination as well, introducing the immune system to a threat in a controlled way so that memory cells can form in advance, ready to shield the body if the real threat ever appears. There is something remarkable in the idea that your body carries a kind of biography within it, an unspoken record of everything it has already learned to protect you from. Long after conscious memory fades, this quieter form of memory often remains faithful and unseen, still working entirely on your behalf. Inside nearly every cell in your body, there is a structure so small it cannot be seen without a microscope, and yet without it nothing else in you could function. These are mitochondria, often described as the energy centers of the cell. Their primary role is to convert nutrients from food into a usable form of energy called adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, through a process that runs continuously day and night without pause. This energy powers virtually everything the body does, from a single heartbeat to a passing thought. That seems obvious, once explained. It rarely feels that way though, since energy itself is invisible, easy to take for granted, until it runs low. Interestingly, mitochondria contain their own small set of genetic material, separate from the rest of the cell, believed by scientists to have originated from ancient bacteria that formed a cooperative relationship with early cells billions of years ago. Even now, that ancient partnership continues quietly inside you. There is something quietly moving in that history. A billion-year-old collaboration still hums along inside every cell of your body, tirelessly converting what you eat into the energy that allows you to move, think, and simply continue being alive. There is an organ tucked beneath your ribs on the right side that performs more distinct functions than almost any other part of the body, and it does so entirely without asking for recognition. The liver processes nearly everything that enters the bloodstream, filtering out toxins, metabolizing medications, and breaking down substances the body no longer needs. It also produces bile to aid in digestion, stores essential vitamins and minerals, and regulates blood sugar by storing and releasing glucose as needed. All of this happens continuously, coordinated across hundreds of separate biochemical processes at once. Have you ever noticed how quickly the body seems to recover after a period of poor rest or heavy indulgence, quietly restoring balance without you ever directing the process yourself? What makes the liver especially remarkable is its capacity for regeneration. Even after significant tissue loss, it can often rebuild much of its original mass over time, a rare trait among the body's major organs. There is something quietly reassuring in this. Behind the scenes, without complaint or ceremony, this organ absorbs the weight of what you consume, filters what does not belong, and continues functioning steadily, asking for nothing in return, except perhaps a little patience and care. There is a moment so brief, it barely registers between the instant of a small cut and the instant your body has already begun to seal it. Platelets are tiny cell fragments circulating in the blood, and they respond to injury with remarkable speed. Within seconds of a break in a blood vessel, platelets gather at the site, clumping together to form a temporary plug. A cascade of proteins known as clotting factors follows quickly behind, reinforcing that plug with a mesh of fibrin, gradually forming a stable clot that stops the bleeding and begins the process of healing. This feeling sometimes visits you as a small, forgotten sting, already fading by the time you notice it because your body had already finished responding before you had time to worry. This entire sequence occurs with striking precision, activating only where needed and stopping once the vessel has been sufficiently repaired, preventing clotting from spreading further than necessary throughout the bloodstream. There is something quietly remarkable in this kind of readiness. Long before conscious thought can catch up, the body has already moved to protect itself calmly and efficiently, treating even the smallest injury with the same quiet devotion it offers to every other part of you. Hidden within the spongy interior of certain bones, an extraordinary process unfolds continuously, one responsible for replenishing an entire population of cells throughout your lifetime. This is bone marrow, and it serves as the body's primary site for producing blood cells, a process called hematopoiesis. Specialized stem cells within the marrow continuously divide and mature into red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets, each destined for a different essential role. This production never truly pauses, replacing older worn cells with new ones in a steady, uninterrupted cycle that has continued since before you were born. We often carry the weight of the world on our minds, forgetting that somewhere deep inside, new life is quite literally being created for us every single day without a moment of rest. Red blood cells, for instance, typically last only a few months before being replaced, meaning the marrow must continuously generate new ones, simply to maintain a stable supply. This rate of production is one of the most active cellular processes in the entire body. There is something quietly profound in this. Deep in the structure that holds you upright, life is being renewed constantly, cell by cell, in a rhythm so steady and so hidden that most people go their entire lives without ever once considering it. There is a quiet contradiction living inside your stomach. The very organ responsible for breaking down food must also protect itself from the powerful acid it produces to do so. The stomach lining is coated in a thick layer of mucus rich in bicarbonate, which neutralizes acid before it can damage the underlying tissue. This protective barrier is remarkably resilient, but it is also temporary, by design replaced approximately every few days, as cells are shed and regenerated. This constant renewal ensures the barrier remains strong enough to withstand an environment that would otherwise cause harm. Think back to the last time your stomach quietly settled after a meal, its careful internal balance restoring itself without a single thought from you. This system usually works in seamless coordination, but factors like prolonged stress or certain medications can sometimes disrupt the balance between acid production and protective mucus, which is part of why digestive discomfort can occasionally arise even in an otherwise healthy body. There is something quietly impressive in this design. The stomach does not simply endure its own acidity. It actively, continuously shields itself, replacing its protective lining again and again, ensuring it can keep doing its essential work without ever turning against itself. There is an entire electrical language running through your body right now. And remarkably, you experience none of the mechanics behind it, only the outcome. Neurons communicate through electrical impulses that travel along their length, triggered by shifts in electrically charged particles moving across the cell membrane. In certain nerve fibers, particularly those coated in a fatty substance called myelin, these signals can travel at considerable speed, allowing for near instantaneous communication between the brain and the rest of the body. This is how a decision to move a hand becomes almost immediately the hand actually moving. Have you ever reached out to catch something falling before you had time to consciously decide to do so? This speed is essential for survival, allowing reflexes and rapid responses to occur faster than conscious thought could ever manage on its own. Beneath every simple action lies an intricate, high-speed exchange of electrical and chemical signals, coordinated across billions of neurons, working in concert. There is something quietly humbling in this. An entire hidden language, fast, precise, and constant, underlies every single motion you make. And yet, you never feel the electricity itself, only the quiet, effortless result of a body working exactly as it was designed to. Most systems in the body have a clear source of momentum, a heart to pump blood, lungs to draw breath. But one essential system has no pump at all and instead depends almost entirely on you simply moving through your day. The lymphatic system carries lymph, a clear fluid containing white blood cells and waste products, through a network of vessels that runs throughout the body. Unlike blood, this fluid is not propelled by a central organ. Instead, it relies on the gentle contraction of surrounding muscles, along with breathing and everyday movement, to push it steadily along its path toward the lymph nodes, where it is filtered before returning to the bloodstream. That seems obvious once explained. It rarely feels that way though, since most people never realize that something as ordinary as walking is quietly supporting their immune health. This is part of why regular movement is considered so important for overall well-being, not simply for muscles or the heart, but for an entire protective system that depends on motion to function properly. There is something quietly poetic in this. A vital part of your body's protection asks for nothing more than the simple act of living, moving, walking, breathing, trusting that your ordinary day will be enough to keep it flowing exactly as it should. There is a kind of precision inside your immune system that borders on artistry, each piece custom-shaped for a purpose so specific it could serve almost no other role. Antibodies are proteins produced by specialized white blood cells, and each one is structured to recognize and bind to a particular molecular shape found on a specific virus or bacteria. This binding does not happen by chance. The immune system generates an enormous variety of antibody shapes, then selects and multiplies the ones that match a given threat most effectively, refining that match further over time. This feeling sometimes visits you as quiet resilience during a season when illness seems to pass others by, evidence of a system that has already learned with remarkable precision exactly what to look for. Once an effective antibody is identified, the immune system can produce it in large quantities, and in many cases retain the blueprint for future use. This is part of what allows the body to respond more swiftly the second time a familiar threat appears. There is something quietly extraordinary in this level of specificity. Somewhere inside you, a vast and adaptable library of molecular keys is constantly being built and refined, each one shaped patiently to fit precisely what it was made to meet. Not every part of the body is equally open to what circulates through the blood. One structure in particular acts as a careful, deliberate gatekeeper, and it protects the most delicate organ you have. The blood-brain barrier is a highly selective layer of cells lining the blood vessels of the brain, allowing essential substances like oxygen and glucose to pass through, while blocking many potentially harmful substances from entering. This barrier is not simply a wall. It is an active, discerning system capable of distinguishing between what the brain needs and what it does not. We often carry the weight of the world on our minds, forgetting that the brain itself is being carefully shielded moment to moment by a barrier built specifically to protect it. This selectivity, while protective, also poses challenges in medicine, since many medications struggle to cross this barrier effectively, a topic still actively studied by researchers seeking better ways to treat conditions affecting the brain. There is something quietly reassuring in the existence of this barrier. Even in a body constantly exposed to the outside world, the most essential and delicate part of you is granted its own careful boundary, a gate that opens only for what truly belongs. There is a tendency to look at a scar and see only what went wrong, but a scar, more accurately, is evidence of something that went right. When skin is deeply injured, the body initiates a careful multi-stage healing process. First, controlling bleeding, then clearing debris, then rebuilding tissue using a protein called collagen. This new tissue is often laid down in a slightly different pattern than the surrounding skin, which is why scars can appear smoother or less flexible than the tissue around them. Still, this represents the successful completion of a protective process, not an unfinished one. Have you ever traced a small scar with your finger and realized, perhaps for the first time, that it marks not an injury but a healing already finished? Over time, many scars continue to soften and fade somewhat, though the underlying tissue structure typically remains permanently altered in some way. This is simply part of how the body chooses durability over restoration to its exact original form. There is something quietly moving in this reframing. A scar is not a wound left open. It is a closed chapter, a quiet signature left behind by a body that faced something difficult and, in its own steady way, finished the job of protecting you. A single meal seems simple enough from the outside, chewed, swallowed, and gone. But underneath that simplicity lies an intricate, carefully sequenced process guided by dozens of specialized helpers working in coordinated harmony. Enzymes are proteins that speed up specific chemical reactions, and digestion depends on an entire series of them, each suited to a particular task. Amylase begins breaking down starches in the mouth. Pepsin works on proteins in the stomach. Further along, enzymes from the pancreas and small intestine continue the process, breaking food down into components small enough for the body to absorb and use. That seems obvious once explained. It rarely feels that way though, since this entire sequence unfolds silently, somewhere beneath conscious awareness every time you eat. Each enzyme is highly specific, often capable of acting on only one particular type of molecule, which is why the digestive process requires such a wide and carefully coordinated variety of them to function properly. There is something quietly impressive in this choreography. An ordinary meal becomes, without your notice, the occasion for an elaborate biochemical performance. Dozens of players working in sequence, each one trusting the last, simply to give your body what it needs to keep going. There is a surface inside you that renews itself more quickly than almost any other tissue in the body, and it does so continuously without a single moment of disruption to your daily life. The lining of the small intestine, responsible for absorbing nutrients from digested food, is made up of cells that are replaced remarkably fast, typically within just a few days. This rapid turnover is necessary because the intestinal lining is constantly exposed to digestive enzymes, acids, and the friction of moving food, wear that would otherwise compromise its ability to function properly over time. Think back to the last time you ate a meal without a single thought about the intricate machinery quietly absorbing its nutrients on your behalf. This process is supported by specialized stem cells located at the base of tiny structures called intestinal crypts, which continuously divide to produce new cells that migrate upward to replace those that have been shed. This entire cycle repeats itself endlessly, a quiet and complete renewal occurring far beneath conscious notice. There is something quietly remarkable in this pace of renewal. One of the most demanding surfaces in your entire body is also one of the most frequently rebuilt, ensuring that no matter how many meals you have shared, your body always meets the next one with fresh, capable tissue. It seems almost disproportionate the amount of coordinated effort your body dedicates to something as small as a paper cut. And yet that is precisely what happens every single time. The moment skin is broken even slightly, a full sequence begins. Blood vessels constrict briefly to limit bleeding. Platelets gather to form an initial seal. Clotting factors reinforce that seal with fibrin. White blood cells arrive shortly after, gently clearing away any debris or unfamiliar material. Finally, new tissue begins to form, closing the wound completely, often within a matter of days. We often carry the weight of the world on our minds, forgetting that even the smallest injury receives the same devoted, complete attention as anything larger. This entire process, though largely unnoticed, involves dozens of coordinated biological actors, each responding automatically, each trusting the timing of the others without hesitation. Nothing about this scale of injury is treated as unworthy of a full response. There is something quietly touching in this. The body does not measure its care according to the size of the wound. It offers the same full, careful attention to a paper cut as it would to something far greater, a small and constant reminder of how thoroughly you are looked after. Scattered throughout the body in places rarely thought about, there are cells simply waiting, holding a kind of quiet potential most tissue does not possess. These are stem cells, and their defining trait is versatility. Certain stem cells found in places like bone marrow or the lining of the intestine retain the ability to become several different types of specialized cells, depending on what the surrounding tissue requires. When damage occurs, or when normal cell turnover calls for replacement, these cells can activate, dividing and transforming to meet that specific need. Have you ever wondered how the body seems to know exactly what kind of new tissue a particular injury requires? This process is guided by complex signaling within the surrounding environment, chemical cues that inform a stem cell what it should become. Researchers continue to study these signals closely, since understanding them more fully holds significant promise for future medical treatment. There is something quietly hopeful in this design. The body does not simply rebuild in a single fixed way. It keeps a reserve of possibility on hand, patient and unspecialized, ready to become precisely what is needed, exactly when the moment calls for it. Tucked beneath the ribs on the left side of the body, there is an organ that rarely receives much attention, and yet it performs a task essential to keeping the blood healthy and functional. The spleen filters blood as it passes through, identifying red blood cells that have aged or become damaged, typically after several months of circulation. These older cells are gently removed from circulation and broken down, their components recycled for use elsewhere in the body, including iron that is later reused in the formation of new red blood cells. This feeling sometimes visits you as a quiet sense of steadiness, made possible in part by an organ working constantly to keep your blood supply fresh and functional. Beyond this filtering role, the spleen also serves an immune function, housing white blood cells that help identify and respond to unfamiliar substances in the blood. While the body can function without a spleen if necessary, its presence offers a quiet, continuous layer of support that is not easily replicated. There is something fitting in how unassumingly this organ works. It does not announce the cells it removes or celebrate the space it creates. It simply continues steadily, making room for what is new, so the rest of the body can keep moving forward without interruption. A rising temperature is often treated as something gone wrong, a signal to worry. But in most cases, fever is not a malfunction at all. It is a deliberate, purposeful response. When the immune system detects something unfamiliar, it can trigger the hypothalamus to raise the body's internal temperature above its normal baseline. This elevated environment makes conditions less favorable for certain viruses and bacteria to replicate, while also enhancing the activity of specific immune cells. In this sense, fever functions as a supportive mechanism, not a failure of the body, but an intentional shift meant to help it shield itself more effectively. That seems obvious once explained. It rarely feels that way though, especially in the moment when a fever simply feels uncomfortable rather than purposeful. Researchers continue to study the full extent of fever's benefits, though it is well established that this response is closely coordinated with the immune system, timed and regulated with far more precision than its discomfort might suggest. There is something quietly reassuring in understanding fever this way. Even in moments that feel unsettling, the body is often not struggling. It is responding with intention, adjusting itself carefully, doing exactly what it was designed to do to help you through. There is a small, constant motion happening in your eyes at this exact moment, one so subtle that you have almost certainly never caught it occurring. Your pupils are adjusting continuously, responding not only to the light in the room around you, but also to shifts in attention, emotion, and even mental effort. This adjustment is controlled by the autonomic nervous system, meaning it requires no conscious thought whatsoever. The muscles of the iris contract or relax in fractions of a second, tuning how much light reaches the retina at any given moment. Right now, in whatever room you happen to be sitting in, your eyes are quietly calibrating themselves to this space, this light, this particular moment, without you ever having to ask them to. Interestingly, pupil size can also shift slightly in response to interest or engagement, a subtle physiological signal researchers have studied as a window into attention and emotional response, though the full nuance of this connection still being explored. There is something quietly intimate in this fact. Even now, your body is responding to your immediate surroundings in ways you will never consciously perceive, adjusting itself to this exact moment, this exact room, simply so you can see clearly. Wherever you are seated or resting right now, your body has already registered the surface beneath you in detail, though you likely stopped consciously noticing it within moments of settling in. This is due to sensory adaptation, a process in which nerve endings gradually reduce their signaling when a stimulus remains constant. Pressure receptors in the skin detect the initial contact with the surface clearly, but as that pressure continues unchanged, the signals sent to the brain diminish, allowing your attention to move elsewhere. This is not the body ignoring the surface. It is the body deciding quietly that the information no longer requires urgent attention. Notice just for a moment the surface currently supporting you, and feel how quickly your awareness can return to something your body never actually stopped monitoring. This same principle applies broadly throughout the senses, allowing you to become unaware of the feeling of clothing against skin or a faint background sound, simply because your nervous system has determined these details are safe and unchanging. There is something quietly efficient in this design. Your body does not waste attention on what does not require it, freeing your mind to focus elsewhere, while still underneath it all, continuing to sense and support you without a single lapse. There are certain places in the body that seem to gather tension, quietly holding on to it, long after the mind has moved on to something else entirely. The jaw, shoulders, and hands are particularly prone to this. These areas contain dense clusters of muscles, often engaged during states of stress or concentration, and because their tension can be subtle, it frequently goes unnoticed until it becomes uncomfortable or persistent. Unlike a sharp pain that demands immediate attention, this kind of tension tends to build slowly, almost invisibly, in the background of an ordinary day. This feeling sometimes visits you in the middle of an unrelated task, a sudden awareness that your jaw has been tightly clenched or your shoulders raised for reasons you cannot quite recall. Gently releasing this tension through conscious relaxation or simple awareness can measurably ease physical discomfort, since sustained muscle tension has been linked to issues like headaches and general fatigue over time. There is something worth noticing here right now. Take a slow moment to check your own jaw, your own shoulders, your own hands. If there is tension there, you are welcome to let it go gently, simply because your body does not need to carry it any longer. The air surrounding you right now, whatever its temperature or dryness, is not the air that ultimately reaches the deepest parts of your lungs. Somewhere along the way, it is quietly transformed. As air travels through the nasal passages, it passes over a rich network of blood vessels and moist tissue, which work together to warm and humidify it before it continues further into the respiratory system. This process helps protect the delicate tissue of the lungs from being irritated by air that is too cold or too dry, allowing gas exchange to occur under far gentler conditions than the outside environment might otherwise provide. There is a quiet kindness in knowing that every single breath, no matter the weather outside, is gently prepared before it ever reaches the deepest, most delicate part of you. This is part of why breathing through the nose is generally considered more beneficial than breathing through the mouth, since the mouth lacks this same conditioning structure, allowing air to reach the lungs in a less prepared state. There is something quietly attentive in this design. Long before oxygen ever reaches your bloodstream, your body has already taken care to adjust it, softening the outside world just enough to make it safe for what lies within. Somewhere in the last few seconds, without any effort or awareness on your part, the rhythm of your heartbeat has already changed, if only slightly. This natural fluctuation is known as heart rate variability, the small variation in time between each heartbeat. Rather than being a flaw, this variability is generally considered a sign of a well-functioning nervous system, reflecting the heart's ability to respond quickly to shifting internal and external conditions, from a passing thought to a change in breathing pattern. Notice your breath for just a moment, and know that somewhere beneath your awareness, your heart has likely already responded to it, adjusting itself gently in return. Research has shown that higher heart rate variability is often associated with better stress resilience and overall cardiovascular health, while lower variability can sometimes indicate the nervous system remaining in a more constant state of alertness. This measurement continues to be studied closely as a window into overall well-being. There is something quietly moving in this responsiveness. Your heart is not a fixed metronome indifferent to your experience. It is constantly listening, constantly adjusting, faithfully responsive to even the smallest shifts happening within you moment to moment without you ever needing to ask. There is a reason the fingertips feel things with such striking clarity. A fine grain of texture, a subtle shift in temperature details other parts of the body would likely miss entirely. The fingertips contain an especially dense concentration of touch receptors, including specialized structures capable of detecting fine texture, light pressure, and vibration with remarkable precision. This density is far greater than in most other areas of skin, which is why the fingertips are often used instinctively to explore unfamiliar objects or confirm details the eyes alone cannot fully capture. Right now, if you gently press your fingertips together, you may notice just how much detail your body is quietly gathering, even in something as simple as that small motion. This heightened sensitivity is directly reflected in the brain as well, where the region processing sensation from the hands occupies a disproportionately large area compared to other parts of the body, a concept clearly illustrated by what neuroscientists often call the sensory homunculus. There is something quietly wonderful in this design. Of all the surfaces available to you, the body chose the fingertips to carry the richest, most detailed sense of touch, ensuring that connection, whenever it happens, is met with remarkable clarity and care. At the base of the skull, just where the neck meets the head, there is a small region that carries far more significance than its size would suggest. This area is rich in nerve endings and muscle attachments, making it particularly sensitive to both tension and touch. Several major nerves pass through or near this region, including those associated with headaches that originate at the back of the head. Because this area supports the considerable weight of the head, while also anchoring numerous muscles involved in posture, it is prone to accumulating tension, especially during periods of prolonged sitting or mental focus. Have you ever felt a persistent ache at the base of your skull after a long day, without quite understanding where it had come from? Because of the density of nerve endings in this region, gentle pressure or light touch here is often described as unusually soothing, a response rooted in genuine anatomical sensitivity rather than simple preference. There is something quietly meaningful in this small, often overlooked place. It carries more than physical weight. It holds tension collected over the course of an entire day, and in turn it responds with unusual sensitivity to even the gentlest, most careful attention. No two breaths are ever entirely identical. Even in perfect stillness, the rhythm, depth, and pace of your breathing shift, constantly responding to signals the conscious mind rarely registers. Breathing is regulated primarily by the brainstem, which continuously monitors levels of carbon dioxide and oxygen in the blood, adjusting the rate and depth of each breath accordingly. But breathing also responds to emotional and cognitive state, meaning a wandering thought, a moment of focus, or even the simple act of listening closely can subtly alter its pattern. Notice, if you can, whether this particular breath feels any different from the one before it. That subtle difference is not imagined. It is your body continuously responding to you. This responsiveness is part of why breath is often used as an entry point for calming the nervous system, since it exists at a rare intersection between automatic and voluntary control. One of the few internal processes a person can consciously influence. There is something quietly powerful in this. Breath is never static. It is a constant living conversation between body and mind, shifting gently with every passing moment, offering in its own quiet way a doorway back to calm whenever it is needed. Of all the senses, hearing is the one that never truly rests. Even in the depths of sleep, the auditory system continues its quiet work, listening on your behalf. While conscious awareness fades during sleep, the brain continues to process auditory information at some level, which is part of why a sudden loud sound can wake a person, while quieter familiar sounds often do not. This selective processing suggests the sleeping brain retains some capacity to distinguish between what warrants attention and what does not, even while the rest of the mind rests. This feeling sometimes visits you as a strange awareness, waking briefly to a sound only to fall back asleep moments later, reassured without quite knowing why. Researchers continue to study exactly how much information the sleeping brain processes and retains, but it is well established that hearing remains active to some degree throughout every stage of sleep, unlike vision, which effectively shuts down once the eyes are closed. There is something quietly comforting in this. Even while you rest completely unaware and unguarded, some part of you continues listening gently to the world around you, a quiet form of protection that never fully closes its eyes. Blinking is one of the most frequent movements the human body performs, and yet it remains almost entirely invisible to conscious awareness, happening dozens of times each minute without a single moment of intention. Each blink serves several purposes at once, spreading tears evenly across the eye's surface, clearing away small particles of dust or debris, and briefly resting the muscles responsible for keeping the eyes open. Remarkably, the brain also appears to suppress visual processing during each blink, smoothing over the momentary gap so seamlessly that most people never perceive any interruption in their vision at all. You have likely blinked several times already since this fact began, and in each instance, your brain quietly filled in the gap so completely that you never noticed a thing. Blink rate can also shift depending on activity, often slowing during tasks requiring intense visual focus, and increasing again once that focus relaxes, a subtle reflection of how closely the body responds to mental engagement. There is something quietly remarkable in this constant, invisible rhythm. Thousands of times a day, your body performs a small act of care for your eyes, so seamlessly woven into your vision that you have likely never once felt it happen. There is a kind of quiet record-keeping happening in your hands, one that updates continuously faster than conscious thought could ever track on its own. Thermoreceptors and mechanoreceptors in the skin of the hands respond almost instantly to changes in temperature and texture, sending rapid signals to the brain that are processed and compared against previous experience. This allows the body to recognize familiar sensations quickly. A cool glass, a rough surface, a soft fabric, often before conscious thought has fully caught up to name what is being felt. Reach out and touch something near you right now, and notice how instantly your hand seems to already know something about it, long before your mind finishes forming the thought. This rapid processing is part of why touch is often described as one of the most immediate senses, requiring less conscious interpretation than sight or sound to produce a meaningful, usable response. There is something quietly remarkable in this constant updating. Your hands are never simply still. They are always gathering, always comparing, always quietly building a living record of the textures and temperatures that make up your ordinary physical world. There is a reason a gentle touch to the back of the neck often feels disproportionately soothing, far beyond what its size would seem to justify. This region contains a notably high concentration of sensory nerve endings, part of a broader network connected to the autonomic nervous system. Light, steady touch in this area has been associated with activation of calming pathways, including those linked to the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for shifting the body toward rest. Think back to the last time a light touch or gentle breeze against the back of your neck brought an unexpected, quiet sense of ease. This sensitivity is thought to be connected, at least in part, to the region's proximity to major nerve pathways running between the brain and spinal cord, making it a particularly responsive area for subtle physical sensation. There is something quietly meaningful in this. In a place so small, so easily overlooked, the body holds a direct and gentle pathway toward calm, ready to respond warmly to the simplest, most unassuming kind of touch. Somewhere inside you right now, regardless of when you last ate, some stage of digestion is quietly underway, continuing steadily without requiring a single moment of your attention. Digestion is not a single event, but an ongoing, layered process involving mechanical movement, enzymatic breakdown, and absorption that can continue for many hours after a meal. Even between meals, the digestive system remains active, engaging in a slower, sweeping motion known as the migrating motor complex, which helps clear residual material and prepare the gut for what comes next. We often carry the weight of the world on our minds, forgetting that our body is quietly, patiently tending to its own needs hour after hour, without ever asking us to intervene. This process is coordinated by the enteric nervous system, sometimes referred to as the body's second brain, a complex network of neurons embedded in the digestive tract capable of functioning independently even without direct input from the brain itself. There is something quietly steadying in this. Digestion does not pause simply because your attention has moved elsewhere. It continues faithfully in the background of your life, an entire hidden rhythm working on your behalf, whether you happen to be listening to it or not. There is a quiet relationship between how you sit and how you feel, one that begins not in the mind but in the simple mechanics of the body. A slouched or compressed posture can subtly restrict the movement of the diaphragm, leading to shallower breathing. Shallow breathing, in turn, is associated with a more activated nervous system state, one leaning slightly toward alertness rather than rest. Conversely, an open, upright posture tends to allow for deeper, fuller breaths, which can gently support a greater sense of physical ease. Notice, if you can, how you are sitting right now, and consider allowing your posture to soften and open just slightly as you continue listening. This connection between posture, breath, and nervous system state is well supported in physiological research, illustrating how something as simple as the position of the body can meaningfully influence how safe or tense the nervous system perceives the moment to be. There is something quietly practical in this. You do not need to change your thoughts to feel calmer. Sometimes, softening the shoulders, opening the chest, and allowing breath to deepen is enough to gently guide the whole body back toward ease. There is a chemical language happening inside you, one that shifts the moment your body senses it is truly safe to rest. When the nervous system registers safety, calm, and the absence of immediate demand, it tends to favor the release of certain neurotransmitters and hormones associated with relaxation, including increased activity of the parasympathetic nervous system, and in many cases, elevated levels of substances like serotonin and oxytocin. These shifts support processes ranging from digestion to tissue repair, all of which are more active during calm states than during periods of stress. This feeling sometimes visits you in ordinary, unremarkable moments. A quiet exhale, a familiar space, a moment of stillness, each one a small chemical signal that your body has recognized itself as safe. Researchers continue to study the precise pathways involved in this shift, though it is well established that the body's chemistry changes measurably in response to a sense of safety, not simply in mood, but in tangible physiological ways. There is something quietly moving in this. Calm is not only a feeling, it is a chemical event, a real and measurable shift. Your body offers itself the moment it believes, even briefly, that it is finally allowed to rest. Even in a moment of complete stillness, your feet are never truly motionless. Beneath conscious awareness, they are constantly making small, precise adjustments to keep the entire body in balance. The feet contain a dense network of pressure sensors and proprioceptors, specialized nerve endings that continuously relay information about weight distribution and subtle shifts in stability. This information travels rapidly to the brain, which responds with equally rapid, almost imperceptible muscular adjustments, tiny corrections in the ankles, knees, and hips that keep the body upright without ever requiring conscious thought. Right now, wherever your feet happen to be resting, they are quietly making these small corrections, faithfully supporting the rest of you without a single moment of recognition. This system becomes especially apparent when it is disrupted, such as when standing on an uneven or unfamiliar surface, moments that reveal just how much constant quiet effort is normally happening beneath conscious notice. There is something quietly moving in this constancy. Long before you ever think about balance, your feet have already been managing it patiently, continuously, asking for nothing except the simple trust that they will keep doing what they have always done. There is a particular kind of warmth that sometimes follows a slow, deliberate breath, and it is not simply a feeling. It reflects a real, measurable change happening inside the body. Slow, deep breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which in turn can lead to a gentle widening of blood vessels near the skin's surface, a process known as vasodilation. This allows more blood to flow toward the extremities, often producing a genuine sensation of warmth in the hands, feet, or chest, particularly noticeable after a period of stress or tension. Have you ever noticed a subtle warmth settle into your chest or hands after finally taking a long, slow breath you had been needing all day? This response has been documented in physiological studies of relaxation techniques, showing measurable changes in skin temperature and blood flow following slow breathing exercises, evidence that the body's sense of ease is never purely mental. There is something quietly reassuring in knowing this warmth is real. It is not imagined comfort. It is your own body responding honestly, opening gently, offering physical proof that calm, when it arrives completely. There is something the body recognizes almost instantly, in a familiar voice, a response so immediate it occurs before conscious thought has fully caught up. Certain sounds, particularly familiar or soothing voices, have been shown to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, leading to measurable decreases in heart rate within moments of hearing them. This response is thought to be rooted deeply in early development, when a caregiver's voice served as one of the earliest and most reliable signals of safety. This feeling sometimes visits you the moment a familiar voice speaks, a quiet, almost immediate settling, long before you've had time to consciously register comfort. Researchers studying this response note that tone, rhythm, and familiarity all appear to play a role, suggesting the body responds not just to words themselves, but to the entire pattern and quality of a trusted voice. There is something quietly moving in the idea that safety can arrive through sound alone, that a voice, simply by being familiar and steady, can reach the nervous system directly, offering comfort the body recognizes long before the mind finds the words for it. Even the muscles doing nothing at this exact moment are not entirely at rest. Beneath conscious awareness, they remain in a state of gentle readiness, quietly primed should they be needed. This baseline state is known as muscle tone, maintained by a continuous low level of nerve signaling from the spinal cord. Unlike full contraction, muscle tone does not produce visible movement. It simply keeps muscles slightly firm and responsive, allowing the body to react quickly whenever sudden movement becomes necessary. Notice for a moment the muscles you are not actively using right now, and consider that even in stillness, they remain quietly attentive, ready, though never demanding. This resting activity requires very little energy compared to active movement, allowing the body to maintain this state of readiness continuously throughout every waking and sleeping hour, without ever tiring in the way active muscles eventually do. There is something quietly reassuring in this constant, gentle readiness. Even in complete stillness, your body has not fully switched off. It remains softly present, prepared, patiently standing by, simply in case you need it. There is a simple, deliberate action available to you at almost any moment, one capable of shifting the entire state of your nervous system within a matter of seconds. A slow, extended exhale, particularly one longer than the inhale that preceded it, activates the vagus nerve, encouraging a shift from a more alert nervous system state toward one oriented around rest and recovery. This shift can begin within a single breath, making it one of the fastest, most accessible tools the body offers for easing tension. Take one slow breath now if you like, letting the exhale extend a little longer than usual, and notice whatever small shift follows. This mechanism is well documented in research on breathing techniques, consistently showing measurable decreases in heart rate and subjective tension. Following extended exhalation, evidence that calm can be accessed directly physically, rather than only through thought. There is something quietly powerful in this simplicity. No tool, no preparation, no permission required. Just one long, slow breath, offered gently to a body that has been waiting quietly for exactly this kind of invitation. Every night, without fail, the mind slips into a state unlike anything experienced during waking hours. And even now, researchers cannot fully agree on precisely why this happens. Dreaming occurs primarily during rapid eye movement sleep, a stage marked by increased brain activity, vivid imagery, and temporary muscle paralysis that prevents the body from acting out what is being experienced internally. Several theories attempt to explain its purpose, including the idea that dreaming helps consolidate memory, process emotion, or simulate potential threats in a safe, contained environment. Yet none of these explanations has been fully confirmed, and researchers still are not certain which, if any, captures the whole picture. Think back to the last dream you can recall, however fragmented, and consider that some part of your mind was quietly working through something even while the rest of you rested completely. What is clear is that dreaming appears consistently across nearly all humans, occurring multiple times each night, regardless of whether it is remembered upon waking, suggesting it serves some meaningful, if not yet fully understood, function. There is something quietly humbling in this uncertainty. Even now, with all that is known about the body, one of its most universal nightly experiences remains in many ways a mystery still gently unfolding. Long before a single word is spoken, long before the eyes even open to the world, something remarkably specific is already being written into the skin. Fingerprints begin forming in the womb, typically completing their pattern before birth, shaped by a combination of genetic instructions and subtle environmental factors within the womb itself, including pressure and position. This combination of influences means that even identical twins, who share nearly identical genetic material, still develop distinct fingerprint patterns from one another. That seems obvious once explained. It rarely feels that way though, since it is easy to assume something so small must be simple, when in truth it reflects an extraordinarily specific process. Once formed fingerprints remain unchanged for the rest of a person's life, aside from natural growth in size, making them one of the most stable and individually unique features the body ever produces. There is something quietly remarkable in this permanence. From before your very first breath, your body had already begun writing something entirely your own. A small, unrepeatable signature carried quietly on your fingertips for the whole of your life. There is a response the body offers, involuntarily visible to everyone, but controllable by no one. And even now, its exact purpose remains only partly understood. Blushing occurs when blood vessels near the surface of the skin, particularly in the face, dilate rapidly in response to certain emotional states, most often embarrassment or self-consciousness. This reaction is governed by the sympathetic nervous system, the same system responsible for many rapid involuntary responses throughout the body. What makes blushing particularly curious is that it appears to be almost uniquely human, rarely if ever observed in other animals in quite the same social context. Have you ever felt warmth rise in your face before you were even fully aware of what had triggered it? Some researchers propose that blushing may have developed as a social signal, an honest, involuntary display of vulnerability that helps maintain trust within relationships, though this theory, like several others, remains an area of ongoing exploration rather than settled fact. There is something quietly touching in this uncertainty. Even something as visible and universal as blushing carries a mystery still unresolved. A small reminder that not everything about being human has yet been fully explained. There is a quiet paradox in the brain's design. It represents only a small portion of the body's overall weight, and yet it consumes a strikingly disproportionate share of the body's total energy, even during moments of complete stillness. This is largely due to the constant activity required to maintain neural function, transmitting signals, regulating chemical balances, and supporting the continuous background processes that keep thought, sensation, and bodily regulation running smoothly. Even when a person is resting quietly without engaging in any deliberate mental task, the brain remains highly active, consuming energy at a steady, significant rate. We often carry the weight of the world on our minds, forgetting that even in rest, our mind is quietly consuming a remarkable share of the very energy that keeps us alive. Much of this energy is devoted not to conscious thought, but to what researchers call the brain's default mode network, a set of regions active during quiet reflection, memory processing, and even mind-wandering activity that continues steadily beneath conscious awareness. There is something quietly humbling in this. Even in your most restful, unoccupied moments, your brain is far from idle. It continues its steady, quiet labor, consuming energy generously simply to keep the rest of you gently held together. Among the many quiet variations found in human bodies, one in particular has resisted full explanation for decades, despite consistent and careful study. Left-handedness appears in a minority of the population, and while researchers have identified links to genetics, brain structure, and even prenatal development, no single explanation fully accounts for why it occurs. Studies suggest multiple genes may play a role alongside subtle differences in how the brain's hemispheres develop and communicate. Yet the precise combination of factors remains only partly understood. That seems obvious once explained. It rarely feels that way though, since handedness appears so early and so naturally that its underlying complexity is easy to overlook entirely. Interestingly, handedness tends to run in families without following a simple, predictable pattern, further suggesting that its origins involve a layered interaction between genetic and environmental influences, still being carefully mapped by researchers today. There is something quietly fascinating in this ongoing mystery. Something as simple as which hand feels natural to write with is beneath the surface, tied to a question science has not yet fully answered, a small reminder of how much complexity hides within the ordinary. There is a small involuntary reaction the skin performs, one inherited from a much older version of the human body still present, even though its original purpose has largely faded. Goosebumps occur when tiny muscles at the base of each hair follicle contract, causing the hair to stand slightly upright. In animals with thicker fur, this reaction traps a layer of air near the skin, providing insulation against cold. In humans with far less body hair, this same reflex persists, triggered by cold or strong emotion, even though it no longer provides meaningful warmth. Think back to the last time a piece of music or a powerful memory sent goosebumps quietly rising along your arms, seemingly for no physical reason at all. This reflex is governed by the sympathetic nervous system, the same system responsible for many rapid involuntary reactions, suggesting that goosebumps triggered by emotion may share some underlying pathway with the body's broader response to meaningful or startling experiences. There is something quietly touching in this leftover reflex. Your body still remembers an old form of protection, offering it gently even now, long after its original purpose has faded into something closer to feeling than function. Laughter arrives easily, often without invitation, and spreads between people with a speed that suggests something deeper than simple response to humor alone. Researchers have found that laughter is deeply social, occurring far more frequently in group settings than in isolation, even when the content triggering it is identical. Some studies suggest laughter may have evolved as a bonding mechanism, reinforcing social connection and signaling safety within a group. Yet the precise neurological and evolutionary origins of laughter remain incompletely understood, an area still actively explored by researchers today. Have you ever laughed simply because someone near you was laughing, even before understanding what had caused it in the first place? What is well documented is laughter's physical effect, triggering the release of certain calming neurochemicals and offering measurable, if temporary, relief from physical tension, a benefit that persists regardless of whether its deeper origins are fully understood. There is something quietly comforting in this partial mystery. Even without a complete explanation, laughter continues to do its quiet work, connecting people, easing tension, and reminding the body again and again of the simple relief found in shared spontaneous joy. Tucked far at the back of the mouth, often causing more discomfort than benefit, wisdom teeth carry a story that reaches far beyond the individual person they belong to. Researchers believe wisdom teeth are a remnant of an earlier human diet, one that included tougher, coarser foods, requiring additional chewing surface and a larger jaw to accommodate it. As human diets shifted towards softer, more processed foods, over thousands of years, jaw size gradually decreased, while the presence of a third set of molars did not disappear at the same pace. We often carry the weight of the world on our minds, forgetting that even something as small as a tooth can carry an inherited memory of how our ancestors once lived and ate. This mismatch is part of why wisdom teeth often become impacted or misaligned in modern jaws, a structural leftover from a body still carrying traces of a much older way of life. There is something quietly fascinating in this. Even now, your body carries small physical echoes of ancestors who lived entirely differently, a quiet reminder that you are not separate from that long unfolding human story, but simply its most recent chapter. For a long time, the appendix was considered little more than a leftover structure, a small organ without any real function. More recent research has quietly challenged that assumption. Current studies suggest the appendix may serve as a kind of safe house for beneficial gut bacteria, offering a protected space where healthy microbes can be preserved and later reintroduced into the digestive system following illness or disruption. This theory remains an active area of research, and while not universally settled, it has meaningfully shifted how the appendix is understood. That seems obvious once explained. It rarely feels that way though, since for decades this small organ was dismissed as entirely unnecessary. Researchers continue to study the precise extent of the appendix's role, but this emerging understanding illustrates how much remains to be discovered, even about structures long assumed to be fully understood. There is something quietly humbling in this shift. A part of the body once considered without purpose may in fact be quietly supporting balance all along, a gentle reminder that certainty about the body is often more provisional than it first appears. There is something strange about a yawn's ability to travel, passing effortlessly from one person to another, and occasionally even between different species entirely. Contagious yawning has been observed not only among humans, but in some cases between humans and dogs, suggesting the phenomenon may be tied to some form of interspecies empathy or social awareness. Despite considerable research, the exact mechanism remains unresolved, though many researchers believe it relates to mirror neurons, brain cells thought to activate both when performing an action and when observing someone else perform it. Have you ever caught yourself yawning simply because someone nearby did, even without feeling tired in the slightest? This phenomenon appears to be influenced by social closeness as well, with studies suggesting people are more likely to catch a yawn from someone familiar than from a stranger, hinting at a deeper social dimension still not fully mapped. There is something quietly fascinating in this unresolved mystery. A simple universal act, one shared instinctively between people and sometimes between entirely different species, still holds a small unanswered question at its center. There is a strange, fleeting sensation that visits most people at some point, a certainty that a brand new moment has somehow already been lived before, and even now, its precise origin is still not fully understood. Researchers have proposed several explanations for déjà vu, including the idea that it may result from a brief mismatch in memory processing, where the brain momentarily registers a new experience as familiar due to a small delay or overlap in neural signaling. Others suggest it may relate to how the brain processes similar patterns or environments, triggering a false sense of recognition. No single theory has been definitively confirmed. This feeling sometimes visits you unexpectedly, in the middle of an ordinary moment, a brief, disorienting certainty that quietly fades again just as quickly as it arrived. What is well documented is that déjà vu tends to occur more frequently in younger adults and often diminishes with age, an observation that has helped researchers narrow their theories even without arriving at a complete explanation. There is something quietly intriguing in this open question. Even a sensation as common and universally recognized as déjà vu remains in many ways unfinished territory, a small reminder that the mind still holds mysteries worth approaching gently and without needing full resolution. Hiccups arrive, uninvited, disrupt speech, and serve no clear purpose in daily life. And yet this reflex persists reliably in every single person from before birth through old age. A hiccup occurs when the diaphragm contracts suddenly and involuntarily, followed by the rapid closure of the vocal cords, producing the familiar sound. Some researchers believe hiccups may be an evolutionary remnant connected to early aquatic ancestors, tied to reflexes once used for managing both air and water intake, though this theory remains unconfirmed. Notably, hiccups have even been observed in fetuses well before birth, suggesting the reflex begins developing quite early. That seems obvious once explained. It rarely feels that way though, since something so common rarely invites deeper questioning about where it actually came from. Despite decades of study, no single explanation has been fully agreed upon, leaving hiccups as one of the more ordinary, yet genuinely unresolved reflexes the human body continues to display. There is something quietly amusing in this. Even something as small and mildly inconvenient as a hiccup carries an old unanswered story, a reflex the body has simply chosen to keep long after its original purpose has faded from memory. An itch seems like a simple sensation, easily explained. Yet beneath that simplicity lies a surprisingly complex and still incompletely understood neurological process. Itching, medically known as pruritus, is transmitted through specialized nerve fibers that are in many cases distinct from those responsible for pain. Researchers have identified specific molecules involved in triggering this sensation, yet the full pathway, particularly for itching, unrelated to any visible cause, remains only partly mapped. This is part of why certain forms of chronic itching remain difficult to treat effectively even today. Have you ever felt an itch arise for no clear reason at all, quietly reminding you how much about even simple sensation remains only partly explained? Interestingly, itching has also been shown to be somewhat contagious in a social sense, with people more likely to scratch after simply watching someone else do so. A phenomenon researchers believe may share some overlap with the mechanisms behind contagious yawning. There is something quietly fascinating in this incomplete picture. A sensation, experienced by every person, almost daily, still holds genuine scientific uncertainty at its core. A small itching reminder that the body remains in places gently unmapped. Every so often a person seems to move through periods of widespread illness, untouched. And while circumstance can explain some of this, researchers have found that genuine biological factors sometimes play a role as well. Certain genetic variations have been linked to increased resistance against specific pathogens, altering how effectively a virus or bacteria can enter or affect the body's cells. In some documented cases, individuals carrying particular genetic traits have shown natural resistance to specific infections, a finding that has meaningfully shaped modern research into treatment and prevention. Still, this area of study remains far from fully mapped. We often carry the weight of the world on our minds, forgetting that our own biology may already be quietly working to shield us in ways we do not yet fully understand. Researchers continue to investigate the full range of genetic and immune factors involved, recognizing that resistance to illness is rarely explained by a single gene or mechanism, but instead by a complex, still unfolding interaction of many factors. There is something quietly reassuring in this ongoing discovery. The body holds more layers of protection than science has yet fully uncovered, a gentle reminder that its capacity to shield you may run deeper than even careful study has revealed so far. Sleep is something every person needs, without exception. And yet, despite its universal necessity, researchers are still working to fully understand exactly why the body requires it so completely. It is well established that sleep plays a role in memory consolidation, tissue repair, immune regulation, and the clearing of metabolic waste from the brain. Yet no single theory fully accounts for why sleep evolved to be as essential and as vulnerable as it is, given that it requires an organism to become largely unaware of its surroundings for an extended period of time. Think back to the last truly restful night of sleep you experienced, and consider how much quiet, essential work was happening throughout your body, entirely without your awareness. Researchers continue to explore multiple converging theories, recognizing that sleep likely serves several vital purposes simultaneously, rather than a single isolated function. A complexity that mirrors how deeply integrated sleep is with nearly every system in the body. There is something quietly profound in this uncertainty. Even something as fundamental and universal as sleep remains only partially explained, a gentle reminder that some of the body's most essential gifts continue to be offered faithfully, long before science has fully understood why. Memory often feels like something stored in a single place, tucked away neatly for later retrieval. In truth, the process is far more distributed and far more intricate than that simple picture suggests. Rather than existing in one isolated location, memories appear to be stored across networks of neurons, spread throughout different regions of the brain, with different aspects of a single memory. Its emotional tone, sensory detail, and factual content potentially involving separate but interconnected areas. This distributed structure is part of why a single memory can sometimes be triggered by something as small as a scent or a sound. That seems obvious once explained. It rarely feels that way though, since memory feels seamless and singular, even though its underlying architecture is remarkably complex. Researchers continue to study exactly how these distributed networks connect and communicate to form a single coherent memory, an area of neuroscience that remains actively developing even now. There is something quietly fascinating in this complexity. Every memory you carry is not stored in one small place, but woven carefully across many parts of you, a quiet, intricate collaboration happening every time the past gently resurfaces. Of all the senses, smell holds an unusually direct line to memory, capable of summoning a moment from years past, with a suddenness no other sense quite matches. This connection is rooted in anatomy. Olfactory signals travel to the brain through a pathway that passes very close to and directly connects with both the hippocampus and amygdala regions, closely tied to memory formation and emotional processing. This proximity is part of why a single scent can trigger a vivid memory far more immediately than a sound or an image typically would. Has a particular scent ever pulled you suddenly back to a moment you had not consciously thought about in years? Researchers continue to explore exactly why this pathway is structured so directly, though it is understood to reflect deep evolutionary roots, since smell was one of the earliest senses to develop closely tied to survival long before other senses became equally refined. There is something quietly moving in this ancient connection. Somewhere in your own architecture, scent and memory remain closely, faithfully linked, ready at any moment to gently return you to something meaningful without warning and without effort. Two people can experience remarkably similar injuries, and yet heal into entirely different results. One scar fading gently over time, another remaining clearly visible for years. Scarring is influenced by a wide range of factors, including the depth of the injury, genetics, age, and even the specific location on the body where the injury occurred. Skin thickness and blood supply vary significantly across different regions, which is part of why identical wounds can heal so differently depending on where they occur. Researchers continue to study the precise genetic and cellular factors that determine why some scar tissue remodels more completely than others. We often carry the weight of the world on our minds, forgetting that healing itself is deeply individual, shaped by a body that is entirely uniquely your own. This variability is part of why scar treatment remains an evolving field, with new approaches continually being researched to better support the body's natural, if inconsistent, healing process. There is something quietly comforting in this individuality. Your body heals in its own particular way, shaped by factors entirely its own. A reminder that its process, however visible or invisible the result is, never something to measure against anyone else's. Humans appear to be unique, or very nearly so, in producing tears, specifically in response to emotion, a trait not clearly observed in quite the same way among other animals. While basal and reflex tears serve clear, well-understood physical functions, emotional tears remain more mysterious. Some researchers propose they may serve a social function, signaling vulnerability or eliciting support from others, while different studies suggest they may help regulate stress hormones, offering a kind of physiological release. Neither theory has been definitively confirmed, and researchers still are not certain which explanation, if either, fully captures the truth. Have you ever cried and felt a strange physical relief afterward without being able to fully explain why? What is documented is that emotional tears differ chemically from other types of tears, carrying elevated levels of certain stress-related compounds, suggesting they may serve a genuine physiological purpose beyond simple emotional expression. There is something quietly moving in this open question. Even something as deeply human as an emotional tear remains only partly explained, a gentle reminder that some parts of you are allowed to remain mysterious and still be entirely, truly yours. For a long time, the gut was understood primarily as a digestive organ, and little more. Increasingly, research suggests its influence reaches far beyond digestion alone. The gut microbiome has been linked not only to immune function, but also to the production of certain neurotransmitters, including a significant portion of the body's serotonin, a chemical closely associated with mood regulation. This connection, often referred to as the gut-brain axis, suggests a level of communication between digestive and neurological systems that researchers are still working to fully understand. This feeling sometimes visits you as an unexplained shift in mood, following a period of illness or dietary change, a subtle reminder of just how interconnected these systems may truly be. While early research in this field has been promising, scientists continue to emphasize that many specific mechanisms remain unconfirmed, and further study is needed before firm conclusions can be drawn about the full extent of this relationship. There is something quietly fascinating in this frontier. Your gut may be speaking to your mind in ways science has only begun to translate, a quiet, ongoing conversation happening inside you, still gently waiting to be fully understood. There is a common assumption that sleep is simply a pause, a quiet stretch of nothing between one day and the next. In truth, sleep is one of the body's most active periods of repair. During deep sleep in particular, the body increases the release of growth hormone, which supports tissue repair and cellular regeneration. Muscles recover from the day's activity, the immune system strengthens its defenses, and the brain works to clear away metabolic waste accumulated during waking hours. None of this requires any effort from you. It simply unfolds quietly while you rest. Think back to the last morning you woke feeling genuinely restored, and consider how much unseen work your body had already completed on your behalf while you slept. This restorative process is well documented across decades of sleep research, consistently showing that adequate quality sleep supports nearly every major system in the body, from cardiovascular health to emotional regulation. There is something quietly moving in this. While you rest unaware and unguarded, your body does not simply wait for morning. It works steadily through the night, mending, restoring, and preparing you gently for whatever the next day may hold. There is a kind of quiet devotion in the heart's persistence, a willingness to continue its work for an entire lifetime without ever once asking to be relieved. The heart beats continuously from before birth until the very end of life, adjusting its rhythm constantly to meet whatever the body requires moment by moment. It does not pause for rest in the way other muscles can. It simply continues, powered by its own internal electrical system, sustained by a steady supply of oxygen and nutrients delivered through its own dedicated blood vessels. We often carry the weight of the world on our minds, forgetting that somewhere beneath all of it, a steady, faithful rhythm has never once stopped keeping us alive. Over the course of an average lifetime, the heart completes an extraordinary number of beats, each one a small individual act of continuation, repeated without fail, day after day, year after year. There is something quietly profound in this constancy. Long before you were aware of it, and long after you stop noticing it, your heart continues its work faithfully, simply because that is what it was made to do for as long as it possibly can. There is no single organ responsible for keeping you alive. Instead, an entire quiet collaboration is happening constantly, each part contributing something essential, none demanding recognition for its role. The heart circulates blood, but it relies on the lungs to oxygenate it. The lungs depend on the diaphragm to draw breath. The kidneys filter that blood, the liver processes what passes through it, and the nervous system coordinates the entire process, moment to moment, without pause. No organ functions in true isolation. Each depends on the others, forming an intricate, cooperative system, refined over the course of human evolution. That seems obvious once explained. It rarely feels that way though, since it is easy to think of the body as a single unified thing, rather than a quiet partnership of many working parts. This interdependence is part of why illness in one system can affect others so significantly, a reflection of just how deeply connected the body's internal systems truly are. There is something quietly beautiful in this cooperation. No single part works alone, and none seeks recognition for its role. Together, quietly, they simply continue doing what is needed, allowing you to move through your life without ever having to think about the collaboration sustaining you. Small injuries happen constantly. A minor scrape, a bruise, a brief strain, and in nearly every case the body responds without hesitation, healing quietly and completely without any need for acknowledgement. This capacity for healing relies on a remarkably coordinated sequence inflammation to protect the area, new tissue formation to rebuild it, and eventual remodeling to restore strength and function. This entire process unfolds automatically, requiring no conscious effort, adapting precisely to the size and nature of each individual injury. Have you ever noticed a small bruise fade completely and realized you cannot recall the exact day it finally disappeared? This ability to heal so consistently reflects a deeply refined biological process, one capable of responding appropriately to countless different types of minor harm, each time restoring the body to its prior state with remarkable reliability. There is something quietly moving in this constancy. Your body does not hold on to small injuries, and it does not ask for gratitude in return for healing them. It simply forgives again and again, quietly restoring you so that you are free to keep moving forward. There is a small, ordinary ritual many people experience daily, and yet it carries a genuine, measurable physiological effect that goes far beyond simple comfort. Warm water applied to the skin, particularly during a bath or shower, has been shown to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, often resulting in a measurable decrease in heart rate and a corresponding sense of physical ease. This response is thought to be connected to both the physical relaxation of muscles and the body's broader association between warmth and safety. This feeling sometimes visits you at the end of a long day, standing beneath warm water, feeling something in your body quietly begin to loosen and settle. Research into thermal comfort continues to explore the full extent of this relationship, though the basic physiological response, warmth encouraging measurable relaxation, is well supported by existing studies. There is something quietly lovely in this. An entirely ordinary moment, warm water against skin, is also a small, genuine kindness offered to your nervous system, received gladly again and again without you ever needing to think of it as anything more than routine. Most of the body's essential processes happen entirely outside conscious control. But breath is different. It exists in a rare, quiet space, where deliberate choice can directly influence something otherwise automatic. By consciously slowing and deepening the breath, a person can directly influence the autonomic nervous system, encouraging a shift toward the parasympathetic rest-oriented state. This is one of the few places in the entire body where voluntary action reaches directly into involuntary systems, offering a genuine physiological doorway toward calm. You are welcome, if you like, to take one slow breath right now, simply to feel this quiet doorway open, even briefly. This mechanism is well studied and forms the foundation of many relaxation and therapeutic breathing techniques, valued precisely because they offer a reliable, accessible way to influence the nervous system directly, without requiring anything beyond attention and breath itself. There is something quietly remarkable in this. Amid a body largely running on its own breath, remains a place where you are still gently invited to participate. A small, steady bridge between conscious will and the deeper systems that keep you alive. It is easy to assume that stress is the body's baseline state, something always simmering just beneath the surface. In truth, the body's natural preferred setting is calm. The parasympathetic nervous system, responsible for rest, digestion, and repair, is considered the body's default operating mode. The more alert, activated state, often associated with stress, is designed to be temporary, a response to specific circumstances rather than a permanent condition. Once a perceived demand passes, the body naturally seeks to return to this calmer baseline. We often carry the weight of the world on our minds, forgetting that our body is always trying quietly and persistently to return us to a place of rest. Chronic stress can interfere with this natural return, keeping the nervous system activated longer than intended, which is part of why practices supporting relaxation are so consistently emphasized in maintaining long-term health. There is something quietly reassuring in this. Calm is not something foreign the body must be convinced to accept. It is the body's original preferred state, patiently waiting beneath the noise, ready to return the moment it is finally given the chance. The body reserves some of its most important work for the moments when nothing else is being asked of it, particularly during the deepest stages of sleep. During deep sleep, the body increases production of growth hormone, supports tissue repair, and strengthens immune function, prioritizing restoration in ways that simply do not occur to the same degree during waking hours. This is part of why consistent quality sleep is so closely tied to physical recovery, especially following periods of illness, injury, or physical exertion. Think back to a period of illness, when your body seemed to ask almost insistently for more sleep than usual, quietly directing its own healing. This prioritization reflects a broader biological pattern, one in which the body allocates its resources according to what is genuinely needed in each moment, favoring repair whenever the demands of wakefulness are set aside. There is something quietly wise in this design. Your body does not require constant activity to prove its worth. It simply waits patiently for the moments of rest in which it can do its most essential restorative work. Healing rarely happens all at once. Instead, the skin repairs itself in careful sequential layers, each one built patiently upon the last. Following an injury, the body first forms a temporary protective barrier, then gradually rebuilds deeper tissue, restoring blood vessels and connective structure, before finally strengthening and refining the new tissue over the following weeks or even months. This layered process ensures that healing occurs with structural integrity rather than simply closing a wound as quickly as possible. Have you ever noticed how a healed injury sometimes continues changing subtly long after it first appeared to be finished? This gradual approach reflects a broader principle in how the body repairs itself, favoring thoroughness over speed, allowing tissue the necessary time to rebuild properly, rather than rushing toward a result that might prove less durable. There is something quietly wise in this patience. The body does not hurry its healing simply to appear finished. It takes exactly the time it needs, layer by layer, trusting that a slower, more complete process will serve you far better in the end. The human body is remarkably capable of adjusting to change, even after years of wear, injury, or shifting circumstance, continuing to find new points of balance long after adaptation might seem unlikely. This capacity is known as physiological plasticity, the body's ongoing ability to adjust its structure and function in response to new demands. Muscles can still strengthen later in life. Balance can still improve with practice. Even the brain retains a degree of adaptability known as neuroplasticity, allowing new neural connections to form well into older age. That seems obvious once explained. It rarely feels that way though, since it is easy to assume the body's capacity for change diminishes entirely with time. Research consistently shows that gentle, consistent effort rather than intensity tends to produce the most sustainable improvements, reflecting the body's preference for steady adaptation over sudden demand. There is something quietly hopeful in this resilience. Regardless of how many years have passed, the body remains willing to adjust, to strengthen, to rebalance, meeting you exactly where you are, ready to adapt again patiently whenever you are ready to begin. There is something quietly staggering in the sheer repetition of an act so simple, it rarely earns a second thought. Each breath draws air into millions of tiny air sacs, called alveoli, where oxygen passes gently into the bloodstream, while carbon dioxide is released in return. This exchange happens with every single breath, repeated continuously across an entire lifetime, an act so consistent that its scale becomes difficult to fully grasp, even though it happens without fail, breath after breath, day after day. Notice your own breath one more time, and consider that this exact motion has already repeated itself more times than you could ever consciously count. This process remains remarkably efficient throughout life, adapting to changing demands, whether resting quietly or engaged in physical effort without ever requiring the lungs to be reminded of their task. There is something quietly awe-inducing in this scale. An act so ordinary it is rarely noticed has in truth been repeated an almost uncountable number of times each breath, a small, faithful continuation of the one before it. There is a subtle physical conversation happening between your hands and your mind, one that moves in both directions, quietly influencing how safe the body feels. The nervous system does not only send signals outward to the muscles, it also receives feedback from them, a process known as proprioceptive feedback. A clenched hand can subtly reinforce a sense of tension, while a soft, open hand can gently signal ease back to the brain, part of a broader relationship between physical posture and perceived emotional state. Take a moment now, if you like, to notice your own hands and allow them to soften and open just slightly as you continue listening. This bidirectional relationship between body and brain is well supported in research on embodiment, illustrating that physical state does not simply reflect the mind, it also gently shapes it in return. There is something quietly practical in this connection. You do not need to wait for calm to arrive on its own. Sometimes simply softening a single small part of the body like an open hand is enough to send a quiet, reassuring signal the whole nervous system can receive. Just as the body can hold on to tension long after a stressful moment has passed, it is equally capable of holding on to a sense of safety, storing it quietly within the muscles themselves. Repeated experiences of physical ease, deep breath, relaxed posture, gentle rest, can gradually shape the body's baseline patterns of tension, much like repeated stress can shape patterns of chronic tightness. This is part of why practices like consistent, gentle relaxation or mindful movement can over time meaningfully shift how the body carries itself, even in ordinary, unremarkable moments. This feeling sometimes visits you unexpectedly, a familiar sense of ease, returning in a space or moment that has in the past quietly offered you comfort before. This capacity reflects the broader adaptability of the nervous system, capable of learning new patterns just as readily as it learned old ones, given enough gentle, consistent repetition over time. There is something quietly hopeful in this. The body does not only remember what has hurt it, it also remembers what has soothed it, holding on to ease, with the same quiet loyalty it once reserved for tension, ready to return to it again and again. There is no requirement that the body continue its work so faithfully. No promise was made, no guarantee given, and yet day after day, it continues anyway. Every system described so far, circulatory, respiratory, immune, nervous, exists as the result of an extraordinarily long process of biological refinement, each part shaped gradually over time to support the others in quiet, continuous cooperation. None of this had to work as well as it does. And yet in the vast majority of moments across the vast majority of lives, it simply continues, faithfully, without complaint. We often carry the weight of the world on our minds, forgetting that beneath all of it, something vast and intricate has been quietly working on our behalf, asking for nothing in return. There is no single explanation for why the body performs this task so consistently, only the accumulated result of countless small systems, each doing exactly what it was shaped to do. There is something quietly profound in this. You were never owed this kind of faithful, continuous care, and yet you have received it every day of your life, offered freely simply because that is what this body, in its quiet way, has chosen to keep doing. Long after this particular moment ends, your senses will continue their quiet work, gathering the world around you, without pause, without complaint, and without ever needing to be asked. The eyes will keep adjusting to light. The ears will keep listening, even in sleep. The skin will keep sensing warmth, texture, and touch. Each sense operates continuously, gathering information and relaying it faithfully to the brain, allowing you to remain connected to the world around you in ways so constant they rarely receive conscious notice. Wherever you go, After this moment, whatever room or place awaits you next, your senses will already be there, quietly preparing to meet it before you do. This continuous sensory awareness forms the foundation of nearly every experience you will ever have, a quiet, constant stream of information collected faithfully moment after moment for the whole of your life. There is something quietly moving in this constancy. Your senses do not pause simply because your attention has moved elsewhere. They continue gathering the world for you gently and completely long after this moment has passed, and long into whatever comes next. There is a common misunderstanding that rest is simply the absence of effort, empty time that accomplishes little. In truth, rest is, in itself, a form of essential work. During periods of rest, the body redirects resources toward repair, immune regulation, and cellular maintenance processes that are far less active during periods of exertion or stress. Far from being unproductive, rest is when some of the body's most important restorative work quietly takes place, foundational to nearly every other system functioning well. That seems obvious once explained. It rarely feels that way though, since rest so often carries an unearned sense of guilt, as though it must be justified rather than simply allowed. This understanding is well supported across decades of physiological research, consistently showing that adequate rest directly supports immune function, cardiovascular health, and long-term cellular repair. There is something quietly freeing in this. Rest was never a pause from the body's real work. It is the real work, quiet and essential, deserving to be offered without guilt, simply because it is exactly what your body has been asking for all along. Every process gathered here today, the quiet heartbeat, the steady breath, the constant renewal of skin and tissue, began long before you had the language to understand any of it. These systems were already fully active before your first memory, before your first word, before you had any awareness that a body was doing anything at all on your behalf. They required no education, no instruction, no conscious effort to begin. They simply started quietly and have continued ever since. Think back if you can to the earliest memory you hold, and know that even then this same faithful system had already been working for years. This continuity reflects the deeply automatic nature of the body's essential systems, functioning fully formed from the earliest days of life, entirely independent of understanding or awareness. There is something quietly moving in this timeline. Long before you could ever appreciate what your body was doing, it was already doing it faithfully, patiently, simply trusting that one day, perhaps only now, you would finally take the time to notice. Across every fact gathered here, one quiet thread remains constant. Every system, every process, every quiet mechanism exists in some way to help keep you safe. The immune system shields you from what does not belong. The nervous system senses danger and safety alike, adjusting constantly to protect you. The heart, the lungs, the skin, the countless unseen processes explored today, each one exists in service of the same underlying purpose, to help you continue safely moment after moment, day after day. We often carry the weight of the world on our minds, forgetting that our body has never once stopped quietly working toward the same simple goal: to keep us safe. This protective orientation is woven into nearly every biological system, reflecting an entire architecture built gradually and carefully around the singular task of sustaining life. There is something quietly profound in recognizing this. Whatever else has been true of your day, your week, your year, one thing has remained constant beneath it all. This body has never once stopped trying quietly and faithfully to keep you safe. There is no requirement to understand any of what has been shared today for it to continue working exactly as it always has. The body does not ask for comprehension, it simply continues. Every process described: circulation, digestion, healing, rest, will carry on tonight, tomorrow, and every day after, entirely independent of whether they are consciously remembered or understood. This is, in its own way, one of the most reassuring truths about the body. Its care for you was never conditional on your awareness of it. You are welcome now to simply let go of trying to hold on to every detail shared here, and trust instead that your body already knows exactly what to do. This unconditional persistence reflects the deeply automatic nature of nearly every essential system in the body, functioning fully and faithfully, with or without conscious attention. There is something quietly freeing in this. You do not need to remember the mechanics of a single process explored today. Your body was never waiting for your understanding. It was simply waiting patiently to keep doing what it has always done for you. After everything gathered here today, there is in the end very little left to explain, and perhaps only one thing left to feel. A body that circulates blood without asking, breathes without instruction, heals without complaint, and rests only to work more quietly still, is not simply a collection of systems. It is, in its own way, a form of constant, unspoken devotion, offered fully every single day, without ever once requesting acknowledgement in return. Right now, wherever you are, however your day has unfolded, this same devotion is quietly present within you, exactly as it always has been. Nothing about this requires belief or certainty, only a willingness to notice what has already been true faithfully for the whole of your life. There is something quietly complete in ending here. After all the detail, all the wonder, all the unanswered questions explored together, what remains is simple. A body this constant, this devoted, this quietly kind, deserves nothing more and nothing less than a moment of genuine, quiet gratitude.